All right, welcome back, Tiffany. Mary, can you hear me okay?
I can, thank you.
All right, so let's go. Let's get moving into the retirement section. Like I said, your Monte Carlo shows you guys at 100%. You got plenty of money to retire and to cover all your expenses. Let's look at here. So, and I'm going to read through this just because it's in here for you when you need to look at it when I'm not around. Uh,
Okay.
so it says here that one of your top priorities is the ability for you to retire together here in 2 years and have enough money to live life as you want and be generous. That's what we're going to help you with as far as recommendations for next time. But for right now, we'll go ahead and continue on with your current situation here for retirement planning. Here's some definitions. One of the ones I want to point out here is the Monte Carlo simulation, which we do refer to quite often. And it's just an investment performance model. It's a model that will just randomize rates of return, inflation, and life expectancy assumptions. It uses thousands of data points and it gives you, it's not a guarantee, but it gives you a percentage probability
Okay.
of, yeah, success. You can read here about your 401k, your 457s, and your 403b, and you can review those with David. The assumptions haven't changed here either. Retiring at 65, begin Social Security at that time. We will discuss, I just want to tease that out there. We will discuss potentially keeping that at 67, so you get a little more. We'll talk about what that full retirement and retirement age Social Security income would be for the two of you in the next meeting. Um, We're assuming you're in good health as you're expecting to live to 92 for David and 96 for you. We'll keep inflation the same. We'll keep all your contributions down here in your 403b and your 457b. We'll keep those the same. We'll do a 2% annual increase on annually on your retirement from Texas Tech, and we'll begin using required minimum distributions for sampling purposes at age 75 according to IRS rules. Now, now let's look at your retirement assets. And that's going to come on the next screen. And it's showing this Monte Carlo simulation is based upon um, all of your current assets. So it combines your Schwab, your 403b, your 457, all those accounts, your LPGA, 401k, and it's showing obviously like we talked about 100% chance of success as far as hitting retirement. And here it is. The cost of your retirement, David to 92, you to 96, is going to be $12.8 million. However, your inflows are $15.3 million. So you do have a surplus, which will definitely, once we dedicate accounts or funding to each one, to be able to meet your goals of the scholarship fund, paying for Lisa and John for college, their gift of $125,000. We can cover the leaving 4 million behind to your heirs with 1 million going to a charity. We have the surplus to do it, and we can get things moving and making money for you to ensure that we can do what you want and then some. As we can see here in 2028, David's Social Security is going to be about 44,000 annually. Mary, yours is going to be almost $38,000. Your pension is going to be $87,000, which is huge for your income. Um, we don't have any investment income during your retirement, and planned distributions of $286,000 start in 2038. That's when you hit 75. And here we're seeing your expenses. As you can see here in the 29, 30, 30 in the 32 time frame, um, your liabilities will drop, so that'll help us. And as you can see here, the key things to note out of here is going to be your required minimum distributions are going to increase, are going to cover some of these increases in costs. That's why you're seeing more taxes paid. It's because you're getting more money and moving up and how much you pay. And potentially it may impact your tax bracket, but we'll look at some of those calculations in the recommendations section. All right. these are your withdrawals. We really don't need to look at those right now as we'll look at recommended and we'll simulate these recommended events when they hit once you're 75. Now, here in this retirement section, I believe we wanted to cover the factors to consider. Okay, so here we'll read through some of this. So you guys are starting out with a healthy amount of retirement assets. There are, however, several key factors you need to consider for this plan to be a success. After running this analysis, your current plan of success, including all your goals, have us at about a 69% probability of success. We would prefer you to have a higher likelihood of success, closer to 85%. And that right there has to do with that guarantees keeping your expenses the same. So we're not asking you to reduce your travel or spend less money or anything like that. But we'd like to get you from 69 to 85. And I think the way we're going to be able to do that, and like I said, we'll talk back and forth, will be through the use of trust, particularly a charitable remainder trust, and maybe even what they call the life insurance trust, the irrevocable life insurance trust. So we'll look at those. The charitable remainder trust for sure will increase your inflows because you'll be drawing annuities out of that. And we'll look at probably using your house for that. Okay, so your Social Security, you plan to start drawing when you retire. That's why we were having the discussion about maybe wait until 67 for both retirement and Social Security. But sometimes when you got to retire, you got to retire, and my job is to help you make that work for you guys. Okay, and then the other factor to go over is in the first 2 years of the chart, you'll see that you're still drawing a salary. That's why you're seeing that inflow there. After you retire, you're going to see on those charts that you're going to start pulling from your investment income to meet your standard of living and meet all your goals. By the time we hit 2038, you're going to start receiving your required minimum distributions, and your inflows will exceed your outflows, meaning you're going to be bringing in more than you're spending. We'll go over recommendations next time. We already have a good basis for your retirement income and expenses. Let's just make sure we didn't miss anything here at the looking at everything in retirement. This will be more accurate and more beneficial. This base facts for looking at everything in retirement. This will be better when we go over recommendations because these graphs will be much more accurate, and you'll see how these gaps are filled in. So let's save that one for next time. But like I said, in the meantime, we'll be going back and forth about trust and about the Texas education fund, and maybe even the 529, but I think you can achieve better with the 529. All right. Let me make sure I verify with you your big goals for retirement. You still want to plan on $50,000 a year for the first 20 years of retirement. Is that correct, Mary?
Yes, on top of the 30,000 that we already spend.
Okay, good. So that'll be $80,000 per year, and we do have those. I'll double check, make sure we have the 80 in here. If we're only at the 30 or the 50, I'll add the other
Okay.
to count for these 20 years. We're doing some home renovations right around when you hit 75. It'll be worth about $200,000 in today's money. We have a scholarship endowment to Texas Tech, $500,000 in about 10 years. We have that gift to Eric for $500,000 about 2 years from now for home purchase. We're currently supporting Elaine at 100 grand per year until the youngest child reaches 18.
Yep.
And for your legacy targets, we want to leave 5 million after second death, meaning you, if the plan works out that you live till 96 and David lives to 92, and then we'll leave 4,000 to the children, 1,000 of that 5,000, 1 million of that 5 million will go to the charity of your choosing, and then 4 million will be split amongst your kids. For health care coverage, as an active employee, you're under the ERS system, and there is a retiree plan, and you kick on to Medicare at 65. We're assuming Part B, Part D is for your premiums. And let me see. Are those assumptions pretty accurate?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Next, we're going to talk about risk management. This is a smaller section, but still important to go over. We'll look at how you guys, what risks you have and what you're doing to mitigate them. Real quick here, the important thing to gather is that risk management is protection against loss, and it's often overlooked by many planners, which is why we want to make sure we don't overlook this. We want to manage risk. It's not a sexy topic. It's not as cool as watching your investments grow, or it's not as neat as expensing items for your beneficiaries out of your trust, but it will help cover you, and that's where insurance kicks in. Let me see. So now we'll go over here's some of the definitions that you're going to see in a lot of your policies, health insurance and property and vehicle and those kinds of things. You'll have to know things such as deductibles and copays and co-insurance and out-of-pocket limits. And then down at the bottom, we have the definition for your employee retirement system here in Texas Tech as an educator. So if you and David have any questions or find a word or need to know more, you can look here. We're still assuming David's going to live till 92. Mary, you're going to live till 96. You guys are in great health condition. There's no underlying conditions we need to worry about. And we'll talk again between now and the final meeting as far as what other kind of coverages you may need that you don't currently have.
Okay.
And the goals of this risk management section and the things you implement is to protect your assets from healthcare expenses, especially as you get older. You don't want a nursing home to drain your bank account when you could have done something as easy as protecting some of those assets and some of that money in something like an irrevocable trust. There's just I think a 5-year window you got to meet where you kind of got to live past that 5 years before the assets are truly protected. But we can get there. We're starting early. We want to ensure adequate coverage for all your expenses, medical. We want to make sure your house and your property and your stuff is covered. We want to make sure your vehicles are covered, and those kinds of things. I know you also have disability insurance in place, which is good, but that ends when you retire. So we'll have to see if your investments and the other money coming in will suffice in case of an emergency. Currently, you have zero deductible and low copays for office visits, and Texas Tech covers 100% of your premium. So that is fantastic, just like the military guys. Your maximum out of pocket is $8,050. Maximum co-insurance $2,000. And then for your copays, co-insurance amounts, it's 20% in network, 40% out of network. Those are just some of the things we included into that $12,000 medical average for an estate your size. That's probably how much you'll spend medically out of pocket based on these rates. Let me see. This is what we talk more about. We're just jotting down your health is good and all the Medicare options when you turn 65. All those things come to save you from having to pay super high premiums and super high medical costs and having to pay out of pocket for long-term care or end-of-life care. So we'll make sure we roll a lot of these assets into a trust so that we can get through that 5-year window to make sure that they can't roll into your trust when Medicare should be paying for that kind of stuff. So that's all in here, and we'll address that more in the recommendations. Long-term care, for long-term care, I'm not going to go over. You guys are in good health. This is something that, if need be, if we get things situated properly, your family assets will not be liable for out-of-pocket costs towards any end of life or long-term care. So we'll structure that properly, make sure we protect you from that because you guys do have good money, you have great assets, and those nursing homes will try to drain you, if that makes sense.
Does.
Okay, currently, let me click on one more slide here, then I'm going to go over some notes. Let's go to here for the goals. All right. And this is where we talk about more of that long-term care stuff. We need to protect your assets from depletion. depletion from those nursing homes or assisted living places or any 2 month stays at the hospital or anything like that. So we will look at trust because you guys are if they're fishing, they can come after you. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So last thing we want to go over here is the last couple notes I have. Your life insurance currently is basic term life, 5,000 each, ends at retirement. Disability insurance, zero premium. That's fantastic. That ends at retirement because you won't be working there anymore. Long-term coverage, you have none. But like I said, that changes when you hit 65 and your retirement and we get into all the Medicare stuff. We'll look into that. There is funding for that. There are programs for all of that long-term care. What we want to make sure is that the programs that are funded by the government are paying for those and not your personal assets. For property and casualty, we have your homeowner's premium is at 3,000. The dwelling we have at 900,000, liability of $1 million. Your auto premiums for 2 cars is $2,200 annually. And your coverage is a little low, but that's all personal preference. Anything that goes over the 30, the 60, or the 25, you can obviously pay out of pocket. You don't have collision, and I didn't see uninsured motorists or underinsured motorists. So those are some of the things we'll have to talk about because if we move that premium up $1,000, I bet we can get you more and your liability being more like 100, 300, 100 with some collision. Even if we keep the deductibles kind of high at 750 or 1,000, for another $1,000, we can really protect you better, especially for uninsured motorists. I've had some experience with that. I've had some friends that have experience with that. And when you're dealing with an uninsured motorist, you're at the mercy of what people are willing to cut you breaks for out-of-pocket costs on repairs are. So we'll look at that. Any questions on your risk management? I know that was a lot, but like I said, we can keep communicating between now and when we have our final meeting. Any questions there?
No, no. Nope. I know we've got some areas that we could probably improve on, especially like the auto policy is we haven't changed those in years. So
Right, you probably had low values because you weren't worth as much, and now 20 years later, you guys are worth a fortune. So it's time to protect some of that fortune.
yeah, we need to look into life insurance also. That's a big one.
Okay, I will actually take a quick note on that because I was going to ask how you guys wanted to deal with that. So we'll look at some life insurance and maybe some of what I was telling you about the life insurance trust. Really protects the money.
That's what we want.
All right. So for income taxes here, so for current year, you guys are at a high marginal tax rate just because of two incomes and how much you make. Thankfully, you're in Texas and there's 0% state tax. There's going to be a drop after you retire as far as your marginal tax rate because you're going to have a tax valley. That's what they call it. You're going to have a tax valley from age 65 through 74 where you won't be making as much, so you'll be paying a lot less, but then you turn 75 and your required minimum distributions start to kick in by law by IRS code. And that'll pop you right back up, if not the same, maybe even a little higher. So we'll have to watch out for that and plan for that. Like I said, the first payment or the first year you need to take it, your required minimum distribution is going to be when you hit 75.
Okay.
Okay, so let's look at some more of this accounting section, income tax section here. There'll be definitions that you and David can go and look over. So like I just said, required minimum distributions. If you want to go back and you're talking to David about it, you can just come check on the definitions here because these are the ones I'm using.
Perfect.
Good asset for you guys. Let's make sure your assumptions here are the same. We talked about the gift tax exclusion, but we're not going to have to worry about that because you are paying for school directly for Lisa and John. We're assuming you're filing jointly. That's the best way. That's the best way in every state, except it looks like Washington State might be cheaper to file separate. But you're in Texas, so you don't have to worry about that.
Something about
Any
that.
any of these, we're going to assume disability income payments are tax-free, so those won't show up as income. Um, Let me see. Contributions to the Red Raider. We have a lot of your tax deductible stuff. We have your retirement account contribution stuff here and all the distributions. And we're going to talk about we're going to recommend next time that some of these accounts, maybe we look into Roth conversions, but let's see, because that might really kick up the taxes you pay on the year you convert. And you may or may not want to do that. All right.
That's good.
Here is your current tax situation. Let me see what we wrote down here. So first, we looked at your current assets to determine what the cost basis was and the potential capital gain. On the following pages, and you and David can look at these in more detail, and we can talk about via email back and forth. You'll see that your Schwab account, which is taxable, has over 55K in unrealized gains. What that means is that that's at some point going to impact your capital, the taxes you pay via capital gain strategies. Well, I'm going to look and verify some stuff about converting that over ownership into a trust account to see how some of that can be offset with maybe Lisa and John's college accounts as expenses. But what we're looking at is getting that 55K in unrealized gains as close to zero as possible, so you pay very minimal taxes, and trusts allow you to offset some of that with expenses towards beneficiaries, which in this case would be Lisa, John, it could be Eric, it could be Elaine, it could be all of them.
Okay.
And I'm going to take down another note. I am going to send you a link um, to parts of a book, and you can then purchase it if you like it. It's called Art of Passing the Buck. And
Okay.
it basically teaches you how to run your family to include your estate and your retirement plans and all your grandkids and kids. Run that family out of a trust um, for tax savings and also for family unity. A family that earns together earns more is what they like to say. So
Okay.
I'm going to send you that. And if you like it, you can purchase the whole book, make sure that they're getting their fair share of that book. But that would explain everything. In fact, at that point, you may come to me with ideas. Oh, I want to put my guns in this trust, and I want to put the pets over here, and I want the kids to have their college fund. At some point, you get too many trusts, but as long as we have one basic solid one, we can flow chart off of it. So we'll talk more about that. Come in between and at the next meeting. So for income taxes purposes, you're also 100% probability of success towards retirement. So you guys have done it right. Now let's go in here and look at your estate. And the estate is basically you and your stuff. So this is your estate, and we'll talk about what's important here to discuss is who owns stuff, who are beneficiaries of stuff that's left behind. What are the goals when the first person dies, when the second person dies? Are we using any trust, which pulls a lot of control back, kind of takes the probate process out of it, gets judges out of it for the most part. Or you can choose to just have a will, and then it will go to probate. One thing about probate is that you have to concern yourself with any cousins or any family members that might want to contest it because they helped you at some point and they feel that they're part of your success and they're due some of it. You could eat up a lot of estate money just in legal fees and fighting this stuff. So probate is an option through a will, but hopefully we'll be able to talk you and David into trust. We'll talk about powers of attorney for financial and health care decisions, because at some point you guys are going to get to the point where either it's slower to process information and make decisions, or you may get to the point where you're in long-term care and you can't make these decisions. So you'll want some powers of attorneys for people who you trust that can make financial and health decisions for you and for the family. If you were in a trust, we would call this person a successor trustee, meaning when, okay, David can't handle, let's say David's the trustee of your family trust. David, for some reason, is losing his memory a little bit or can't manage that, then the successor trustee will pop in, and you're basically just managing you're managing the trust, and all the powers of attorneys are in that trust, and the trustee makes those decisions. It makes it a lot easier, especially in front of in front of potential probate. They'll know you're in a trust. You had what you wanted to happen at death squared away in writing, through a authorized legal document. So we'll definitely look at more into that. I think you guys are really gonna like the trust route. Um, Here in estate planning, I just want to make sure I show you. They show there's some important definitions here. Codicils or amendments to documents, or like they call it a will, but in a trust, a codicil. In a will, a codicil is an amendment to that will. In a trust, it won't be called a codicil, it'll just be called an amendment to the trust. You can look at here if you want to know about contingent beneficiaries, cost basis. You want to look at living wills or definitions for beneficiaries or probate, transfer on death, all that stuff. You can look at that here.
Okay.
Maybe make sure. I think the assumptions are staying the same. We are assuming, we haven't discussed this yet, but we're going to assume $15,000. And it'll go up with the inflation rate, $15,000 in today's money. And final, some people don't like to talk about it, but your funeral costs, your end of life stuff, we're assuming about 15K a piece. And if you do go into probate via the will route, instead of the trust, it's usually about a 1% fee, and then everybody takes their cut. And usually a couple of more people will get a couple bucks out of you. Now, let's look at, I think, so I want to save this current estate situation conversation for the first thing we talk about at the recommendations meeting, because I want to go right from your current situation to how it could look. And I want to whiteboard and flow chart that for you so you can see. On one side, I have my will, and everything is in my name and in David's name, and I'm giving money to the kids, and I pay taxes or they pay taxes, or there's gift tax stuff involved. We'll show you that, which is the way you have it now, and we'll show you, hey, if this was in a trust, then these would be the gift tax implications. These would be gift tax implications, and income tax, estate tax, all that stuff. So let's save this estate conversation for next time, because I think your estate will change too when we move that Schwab into another section of your plan. And we'll talk more about that in the next couple of weeks before we meet again.
Okay.
All right, let me make sure there isn't something on this flow chart that I wanted to share with you. The way we're looking at it now, based on, if you look here, Mary's estate, right, you have $11 million with your taxes and expenses. It looks like you'd currently leave about $11 million, and that's all going into the core cash account. But like I said, we'll run those more accurately when we have discussions about the family and how you may or may not run it through a trust. All right, final consideration here. If you look here, this is one of the trusts we're going to be talking about. So if you want to prepare for next meeting, you can come in here and try to understand this, but this is a charitable remainder trust. And the point of this trust is to use your asset, your house, which the kids don't want, and we're assuming the grandkids don't want either. We can use that. We can put that in a trust, and we can use that to pull annuity values from it in the form of monthly or annual payments to make sure, using present and future value calculations, that we leave the charity the $1 million you want to leave them, and that the rest of the value was extracted and paid to you in form of annuity that could help helping Elaine out, or helping Eric out, or paying for more stuff, or even the stuff you've already committed to, or the TTU scholarship fund. But you can pay for some of those expenses out of the annuities that come out of a charitable remainder trust. The other one, they also talk about a charitable lead trust. We don't like using that for your situation because you're trying to leave a certain amount behind. You're not trying to take the value up front. So we'll probably stick with that charitable remainder trust. There is a credit sheltered trust, which we do like, and we'll look at this a little further for you. But I think that with a family asset protection trust and some other strategies, you might be getting more benefit out of what we may recommend than what you're looking at. Here we also have the irrevocable life insurance trust that we talked about, where the trust will buy policies on you and David, and that's protected, that grows in there, and that has benefits, leftover benefits for the beneficiary and for any annuity strategies you want to run. The intentionally defective grantor trust, we'll look at that one also for you because it popped up here as a recommendation. We don't really like a defective grantor because that defective grantor is still responsible for all the taxes. The only benefit is that it's not on their books. I think that can get rolled into court really easily, and that could leave you open for any long-term care or nursing homes to extract the value of that trust because there's no split title on that one. And with that, I think with that, I'll leave you for next time. We'll be sending you information in between now and then. Do you have any final questions or any notes you want me to take of stuff you want me to make sure I get to you?
No, no, just definitely more information on those, the life insurance trusts and the charitable remainder trusts, and any information you have, maybe so we can try to make a decision or at least have a lot more questions on the 529s versus the credits, anything for the education. But no, it looks like we're in good shape. Just need to figure out where to put this money so it does the best thing for us.
All right, well, that's perfect. Thank you. Make sure I send more information. And if you have anything, feel free to text, call, email, those kinds of things. If I don't answer your call, you can text me, but or leave a voicemail. I'll get right back with you. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.